have to change that. Hello, I'm Christine Schiavone, and our show is Spiritual Exploration. Tonight we're going to do our Halloween show for 2014. And here to help me with it as my guests are Brian Cano and Chris Mancuso. Brian Cano and Chris Mancuso are with a group called Scared. And they used to be Scared on Staten Island, but then when you started branching out, you had to be scared everywhere, so you were just scared.
Indeed.
You know, when I say to people, I'm doing a show with the scared people, what are they scared of? So I have to go into an explanation, you know. But you guys seem to know a lot about where Halloween got started and why today do we dress up and knock on people's doors and try to extort candy from them.
Uh-oh.
Well, as paranormal investigators, we're kind of always looking for ghosts. So it's like every day is like Halloween for us, you know?
I bet. Well, I've been on investigations too, and you're absolutely right, especially when you succeed in coming across the ghosts.
Yeah, on those rare occasions, absolutely.
Well, do you believe that the veil on Halloween is the thinnest, and that you can more easily come across ghosts?
That's hard to say from my experience. I don't see it being thinner than any other time of the year, but that is what the Celtics did believe back in like the 600s or something like that, and that's was part of their whole festival was Samhain. It was a harvest festival, and they celebrated their end of the year. I guess it was in November. So that was the whole thing. That's when they believed that the veil between the land of the living and the dead was the thinnest, and spirits were actually able to cross into this world at that point.
And communicate.
And, well, actually physically cross into the world. Not just communicate, but be present in this world.
And seen.
Seen.
Well, definitely being seen. The entire reason for dressing up, at the time they called it guising, was to fool these entities that came forward. Now, in the Gaelic tradition, they were seen as like fairy-like creatures called the Eshi, and they would physically be here, and they would go from house to house, and literally, if you didn't appease them in some way, they would bring misfortune or some other kind of bad luck to you and your family. So
that's where they get trick or treat from.
Essentially, and trick wasn't so much a, hey, I'm going to do something fun. It was seen as a threat. So it was almost threat or treat.
Oh, I see. In other words, if you don't give me a treat, you're going to really be sorry.
Extortion.
Well, it's funny. Like I think it was in the 1800s in Europe and stuff like that. They had what was called souling, which is where the poor people would go from house to house, and they would ask for a treat, which they were called like soul cakes. It was like a cookie with like a cross on it, and by eating that cookie, they were supposed to free a soul from limbo. So they would go and knock on the door, give me a cookie, and I'll somehow, by them ingesting this cookie or soul cake, it would free a soul from limbo. And they would offer up prayers and songs and things like that.
It's like the lighting of candles in church, like to give a prayer or a votive. The soul cakes were that, hey, if you give this to me, I'll do this for you. I guess because they couldn't pray for themselves, it didn't count. Or
I guess. I don't know. Prayer's a prayer, if you ask me.
Well, that's true. You could pray for yourself. You could pray for someone else. You could pray for a person, place, or thing. You know.
Absolutely.
But anyway, though. So now we have the jack-o'-lanterns also played a big part back then.
Jack-o'-lanterns actually originally, at its most basic concept, was more just a way to light the darkness as they went on their guising or souling. They would take the pumpkin because, again, Halloween was the precursor to All Hallows Day. It was All Hallows Eve, and it was the end of the harvest. So as they're gathering up their crops and they're signaling the end of the year, it's getting darker, pumpkins are around, so they would carve them out decoratively, light them so that they can light their way as they're going trick-or-treating.
Oh.
And now it's more of a
Decoration.
It's a fun thing. It's a fun thing to do with no real meaning behind it, but that's originally why they did it. And it wasn't always pumpkins. It could be anything that was large of that type.
Oh.
Big turnip, I guess.
No, they're very hard to break into. I've tried.
They also, and this of course is not done today, But they used to set a place at their table with food on it in case the deceased loved ones came back. They would have a place, I guess, to eat, or at least know that they were remembered,
Welcome.
and welcome back, which is definitely interesting. The way the way Halloween has evolved over the centuries.
We definitely have a kind of an amalgam of traditions these days, like the modern Halloween as we celebrate it. It's very commercial, but the traditions that began in Gaelic and Irish and Scottish cultures that have been adapted. I mean, Halloween is, in some cultures, a Christian holiday, but in its original roots, back in when it started in the 600s, I think it was 851, Pope Gregory IV had the celebration of All Saints' Day moved from May to October to coincide with the Gaelic traditions, so that, okay, if we're going to celebrate, let's all do it together. Maybe, I don't know if there's a political reason to increase
Well, it was
Catholic
also
awareness.
easier to get pagans to accept Christianity, just like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Christmas tree was not a Christian thing. It was
a pagan thing, yes.
thing that they incorporated to make those pagans feel more like, hey, this is part of their holiday too. Way back, 1,000 years ago.
It wasn't
whatever
really
was.
intended then to drown out what the pagans were doing. So
Oh, it
It
was.
was but
It's entirely political, but
to absorb them easier.
Yeah.
And that
this
was
is also at the time of the Roman Empire, so they figured, okay, their original reasoning for it, Pope Gregory IV said, hey, in May, it's a very busy time in Rome. Everyone's coming for pilgrimages. We can't fit everyone in the city. So let's move it later on when there's less people. The capital of our grand empire can now host everyone who's coming by to pay tribute to the dead, to make their pilgrimages. And, oh yeah, by the way, Catholicism isn't so bad.
And this way you got to make 2 pilgrimages
Yeah.
so they can collect more taxes and
Tax
fees
the roads.
Just like today. It's my
So in
political
other
statement
words,
today.
it was as commercial back then as it is now.
I guess so.
in its own way, I guess. I guess it's in its own way.
I guess all these things have
just,
their
just like
reasons.
I look at the little extortionist trick-or-treaters who come around today, and it's like they should be working for the IRS. Like, yeah, give me candy, feed my candy addiction, or I'm gonna, cause misfortune. I'm gonna do bad things to you. Just like the IRS. If I don't pay them, I get screwed.
Well, that's for sure. That's definitely for sure. But anyway, though. All right, so going back there, then they lit up the way when they're trick or treating with the jack-o'-lanterns and the costumes, and that was supposed to scare off evil spirits. The costumes,
And also to be in disguise.
yeah.
So that if the SC were around and you wanted to travel and not be attacked by them or bothered by them, you're assimilating yourself to look as they do, so they don't see you, they don't notice you. So it wasn't so much, in some traditions, yes, it is to scare them away, but in others, it's just to assimilate and to not be bothered by them.
If you look at today, and even throughout the years as Halloween has evolved, and notice that certain things are always associated with Halloween, like bats. And I was like, why do we associate bats with Halloween? And one of the theories is that, okay, they used to build these huge bonfires at night, right? And which would attract a lot of insects. All those insects being around would attract
The bats, because
to
they
come
eat
in.
them.
And so it's like, that's why that was associated with Halloween. Like the bats would come out on Halloween and go crazy.
Well, what about witches flying on brooms?
Witches, I don't know if they were originally associated with Halloween per se.
I think it's more just a scary, misunderstood thing. And also, again, with the rise of Catholicism back in the day, it was to villainize those pagan traditions. I mean, witches traditionally have their broomsticks to sweep out the evil spirits, to sweep out the negative influences from their domicile. So, all right, it's not that they're flying on them, but to take the classic image of a witch, the big nose, green, and hat, it was very much a smear campaign at the time for whoever was in power, which, i.e.,
So they wanted to downplay witches and discourage people as far as being witches and associating with them.
it's like the political ads you see on TV right now. Hey, vote for me. That guy's bad. Look at all the bad things he's done.
Right.
Very much the similar thing. It's like, yes, there's witches around, but look, they'll give you warts and they'll turn you into a newt and
they'll turn you green.
yeah.
Yeah.
And anything that wasn't, I guess, coinciding with the religion was considered evil or Satanism. Even though
Well, that still goes on today, too, yeah.
Wiccans were very, I guess, earthly, spirits.
Yeah, well,
and things like
Wiccans
that.
are people misunderstand them.
Very
I think.
nature oriented.
Yes, exactly, and they feel do as you will, but harm none. So there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not hurting anybody, and they're mostly, excuse me, with nature.
Yeah, I can care less how they worship, as long as they ain't bothering me or hurting anybody else.
Well, right, and
I'm
as
fine
long-
with it,
and they don't do animal sacrifice, and they don't, maybe the Satanists do that.
And
But
that's actually another a good point. You just brought about animal sacrifice, stuff like that. Halloween, is black cats
That's
are
right.
always associated with Halloween. And that kind of dates back to, medieval Spain and France, when the superstition kind of aroused that black cats are bad omens and they bring misfortune and curses and things like that. And that was taken to the New World when the Puritans came to America. That was brought here too. And they used to, they would burn black cats.
Yeah.
Pretty much anytime they came across one, along with witches, because black cats were thought to be the witches' familiars.
right,
Well,
and
that
they were
superstition
evil and all that.
continues today.
And
Like
still
right
continues
now,
today.
it's very popular for people to adopt black cats or to hurt black cats in this season, and then when they're done with them, because a black cat is a Halloween prop to a lot of people. So
Yeah.
they're like, hey,
toss it
come
out.
November in all the shelters, you're going to find a lot of black cats that were unwanted or that were taken as kittens. And it's unfortunate that people still have this negative association.
Yeah, well,
with the color
people
of a
can be
cat.
cruel when it comes to animals. They don't think they have any feelings. They don't think that there's anything wrong with abandoning an animal, and there is. Let me tell you, because they are God's creatures, and He will get you if you do anything to hurt His creatures.
I do some volunteer work with animal rescue, and yeah, black cats or even black dogs are considered less adoptable,
Really?
simply because of their color.
That's
I
terrible.
didn't know that about dogs.
Yeah, dogs too. Black dogs considered less adoptable because it's black. It's evil. Really.
People are ignorant and stupid, and they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, there are a lot of beliefs that are around that are really silly.
One would think with all the demystification of these holidays and what these people believed hundreds of years ago, that was superstition, but yet a lot of the stuff some of it still carries over today. And the ignorance and superstition
It's
of people
true, it's
does carry
true.
over.
It's true.
Through the centuries. It's amazing.
That's right. That's right. I know. There's a lot of superstitions, especially surrounding Halloween, and a lot of things. Me growing up, we celebrated it every year. My parents, they were into it. My mother made my sister and I costumes. We had a good time. We went out trick or treat every other Halloween. When I was a kid, though, I was sick. My sister had to go out trick or treating, and then she had to share her candy with me.
That's all right. You got to stay home and collect half the candy. That's not a bad gig.
Right? So I was extorting without extorting.
So she's at the top of that pyramid.
Yeah, you went to tell, yeah. You're like the house taking like 50% or whatever your sister brings home.
That's
Not
right.
bad.
She didn't seem to mind, though. She was okay with it. She got so much, so
I'd be like, yeah, get your own candy.
See, I haven't been dressed up in so many years. I remember when I was a kid, my mother would make me costumes, or I would dress up every year, and it was a big, exciting thing. And
Yeah.
now every year we're on our lecture tour, so we're kind of working every Halloween. But I feel like I'm getting that urge again to
Go
I
out
don't know,
and
maybe
party.
do something like that.
do something nice. Yeah, let's do something that's fun.
Well, the thing for me with Halloween, okay, I don't really celebrate it. Like Brian says, we're always working anyway. I'm kind of a purist with certain things, okay? I see a lot of people today, they dress up as all these like cutesy characters and things from like pop culture TV. No, it's Halloween. I want people to scare the crap out of me with their costumes.
With a Grim Reaper or
and
a
also,
mummy or something.
Also with the little kids, yeah, I wouldn't mind dressing up as something terrifying and giving the little kids a scare because they deserve it. You extort me for money, I'm going to scare the crap out of you with my Wolfman costume, you know what I mean?
Whatever it is. Sure.
And I do like it, it's, like I said, it's kind of being a purist, preserving the holiday as it was. Like, yeah, you dressed up to be terrifying, to either separate yourself or scare off evil spirits or however it was. And today it's just very, it's very commercialized. And, I'm
just like every other holiday,
else.
Christmas.
I'm like
everything.
disenfranchised with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I know. So what about going back there again? Why did they want to start such a thing back in the Celtic times? Why did they decide, hey, let's do this? It was all having to do with what?
I feel like it's funny because as paranormal investigators, we deal a lot with death, questions of where do we go after we die? Is there life after death? Why are we here? You know, those big picture questions. While as our preoccupation every day is how am I going to pay my rent? I got to put gas in my car, things like that. But back then, it seems like our ancestors really had their fingers on the pulse of what was happening to us as a culture, as a species, in, I guess, the universal sense. The Egyptians, the Gaelics, all the Wiccans, all those cultures that practice what we see as a magic seem to have been in touch with a very real truth that in the technological age, after the Industrial Revolution, we as a society have lost. Mm-hmm. So I think that communication with their past ancestors, I mean, you see it in cultures today, like in the Hawaiian culture or the Puerto Rican culture. I've been to both of those islands, and the dead is still very much a part of their culture. You know, the spirits, they're very spiritual, so that's something that they haven't lost, but I think we, in some respect, have, and have made it a holiday to really just acknowledge once a year instead of all year round.
Ah, interesting.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Good try.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why did we then, as a society, kind of turn our backs on that?
I think it was the industrialization of things, because now that we could do everything mechanically, or hey, we have a machine to do this, or we have this, we don't have to pray to gods for a harvest. We don't have to hope for good weather. We don't have to appease those spirits or those otherworldly things for our gain. And I don't know, maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. But
maybe we're getting a little bit cocky, huh?
Probably.
I think that definitely is part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely, with all the advances, like you said, with all the advancements we make in technology, we definitely kind of turn our backs on. Some people don't even turn their backs on religious beliefs, I guess.
Why do you think a lot of costumes? I guess it's because for the scare factor that they use a lot of blood and guts and stuff like that too.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Especially back, like we're saying back then, you either want to mix in with the spirits of the dead, or you want to, because they also did believe. I mean, I guess depending on the region, that because that veil was so thin, not only was it, spirits of, family members and stuff like that, but demons.
So they had to, they wanted to fool them.
Yeah, you want to
so that they wouldn't stick around.
Scare them away.
I think it was, I forget, it might be German's celebration of Titanesberg. I'm totally going to mess up the reference, so I'm not even going to say it. But there's one of the cultures that they have a dinner, and whoever doesn't either tithe or put out their place, that person is supposed to die in a year.
Oh, boy.
Which is why, hey, we're going to observe this.
Make sure, yeah. Well, in the meantime, this was also very interesting, and I'm so glad you came to the studio to tell us all about these and enlighten us about a lot of things that we didn't know about, having to do with the history of Halloween. So, in the meantime, though, what are you guys doing this Halloween? You going to be dressing up or what?
Yeah, we'll be on our lecture tour, Paranormal Mystery Tour 2014.
All right, well, you guys have fun.
Thank you.
In the meantime, I'd like to introduce the Broadway YMCA Glee Club, and they're going to sing some Halloween songs for you to finish up the show. Thank you.
To the woods we went. Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, Jack and the beanstalk, the baker and his wife, and I placed a spell on all the land because the baker's father stole from me, and I took Rapunzel and I put her high up in the tree, and I will not break the spell until midnight tonight, or until I get the boy! It's the last midnight. It's the last wish. It's the last midnight. Soon it will be boom, squish. Told a little lie, stole a little gold, broke a little vow. Did you? Had to get your prince, had to get your cow, had to get your wish, doesn't matter how, anyway it doesn't matter now. It's the last midnight, it's the moon splat, nothing but a last midnight, everybody smashed flat, nothing you can do, not exactly true. You can always give her the boy. No, of course. What matters is the blame. Someone you can blame. Fine, if that's the thing you enjoy, placing the blame. If that's the aim, give me the blame. Just give me the boy. No. You're so pure, but stay here and in time you'll mature and grow up to beat them, so let's fly, you and I, far away. I'm the witch, I'm what no one believes, I'm the witch. They're all liars and thieves like your father, just like you will be too, so I'm soon you'll see the sky fall. Jack, you want a bean? Have another bean. Beans will make for making you rich. Plant them in the floor, hear them once more. Listen to the birds, eyes like a squirrel. They can blame another witch. It's the last midnight. It's the last verse. Now before it I'm giving you my last curse. I'm leaving you alone, squirming in the mess that you made. Fix it on your own. Time for me to go unafraid. Back to what I know, back to more than know. Safe inside the world that I'm from. Better ugly and turn with my powers return, and I fear midnight here turn to disappear. Here I come!
Are you the good witch? Oh, babe, I love it. Those fingers in my hair,
That spot so debonair,
that strips my conscience bare as witchcraft. And I've got no defense for it.
the heat is too intense for it.
But good old common sense will do. cry, wicked words cry, and although I know